Hello and welcome to this course, Understanding the Foundations of Law. This is a beginner's guide to some of the core concepts of law that will help you to understand how law works. If you are a complete beginner and have no idea where to start when it comes to learning about law, then don't worry because by the end of this lesson, you will have a basic understanding of the foundations of law and where you can go from here if you want to keep learning. There are so many areas of law and so many topics covered under each area that at times it can be difficult to know where to begin. So if that is your problem right now, then by the end of this lesson, I hope to have given you some direction. So in this lesson, we're going to cover these four main topics. We'll look at what law is. Then we'll look at the different sources of law. We'll look at the different legal systems that we have. And finally, we'll look at the main branches of law. Let's start by looking at what law actually is. You may think I meant to define law as a body of rules created by the government that people have to abide by or they might face punishment. And whilst this definition isn't completely incorrect, there's more to law than that. According to John Austin, who was a professor of jurisprudence at the University of London in the 1800s, he said that law can be broken down into three main elements. These are a duty. So this is when someone has a legal obligation to do something or not do something. B, a sanction. So this is a type of penalty that's imposed for breaking that rule. For example, if someone breaks the speed limit, the sanction may be a fine or penalty points on their license. Or C, a right. So this is where someone has a legal right to enforce that rule against another person. So for example, if I have a parking ticket because someone parked in my parking space, I have a legal right to take the person to court and ask the court to force them to pay the fine. The purpose of law is to regulate the conduct of individuals and provide a framework for resolving disputes peacefully and fairly. It aims to maintain order, protect rights, and promote the common good. The law also helps to ensure that everyone is treated equally and that no one is above the law. Now let's move on and look at the different sources of law. There are two main sources of law. These are A, primary or substantive law, and B, secondary or procedural law. Primary law, also known as substantive law, are laws made by Parliament. So this is legislation passed by a governing body like our Parliament here in the UK. Secondary or procedural law are laws that are made by courts to help enforce the primary legislation. These are called case laws or precedents. So let me give you an example of this. Say there was a new law passed by Parliament saying that all cars must be a certain height from the ground in order to drive on public roads. So say that this law was made to try and prevent dangerous driving. However, there was no guidance in the legislation as to what the minimum height requirement was. In this situation, it would be up to the courts to decide what the minimum height should be. So if a case came before the courts where a person was prosecuted for driving a car that was too low to the ground, it would be up to the courts to decide whether the car was too low or not. If they decided that it was, then they would create a precedent which other courts would follow in similar cases. Now, let's look at the different legal systems that we have. There are two main legal systems used in countries around the world. These are the civil law system and the common law system. The main difference between the two is how laws are made. In a civil law system, laws are primarily based on comprehensive legal codes and statutes. These are written laws passed by legislative bodies. Judges in civil law systems play a more limited role in the justice process. Their role is mainly to apply the existing laws as written. Civil law systems are found in many countries around the world, including France, Germany, and Japan. Common law systems, on the other hand, rely heavily on judicial precedents. This means that judges play a much more active role in the justice process. They interpret laws and develop new legal principles through their decisions in court cases. In common law systems, judges may depart from previous rulings if they believe them to be outdated or no longer relevant. Common law is found in countries such as the United Kingdom, the United States, and Canada. Now let's look at the main branches of law. There are so many areas of law, and it can be difficult to know where to start. But most areas of law will fall under one of these 6 main branches. These are criminal law, company law, contract law, employment law, family law, and property law. Criminal law deals with offenses against the state or society as a whole. So this is where a person commits an action that is deemed harmful to the community. Examples of criminal law include theft, murder, and assault. Criminal cases are brought by the government or the state, and the burden of proof is on the prosecution to prove the defendant as guilt. If found guilty, the defendant may face penalties such as fines, imprisonment, or even the death penalty. Company law, on the other hand, is a body of rules that governs the formation, existence, operation, and dissolution of companies. It's designed to regulate the behavior of companies and their directors to protect the interests of shareholders, employees, customers, and the public. For example, company law may set out requirements for the composition of a board of directors or rules regarding the disclosure of financial information. Breaches of company law may result in penalties such as fines or even criminal charges against individuals. Contract law, on the other hand, deals with agreements between individuals or entities. It sets out the rules for creating a legally binding contract and provides remedies for breach of contract. For example, if one party fails to fulfill their contractual obligations, the other party may be entitled to damages. Contract law is essential for the smooth functioning of commerce and trade, as it provides a framework for businesses to enter into agreements with confidence. Employment law, on the other hand, is a body of rules that regulates the relationship between employers and employees. It covers a wide range of issues, including the terms and conditions of employment, discrimination, and unfair dismissal. Employment law aims to protect the rights of both employers and employees, and to ensure that the workplace is a safe and fair environment for all. For example, employment law may prohibit discrimination on the basis of race or gender and provide for a minimum wage for all workers. Family law, on the other hand, deals with legal issues that arise in family relationships. This includes matters such as divorce, custody, and child support. Family law is designed to protect the rights and interests of all members of the family, particularly children, and aims to provide a framework for resolving disputes in a fair and equitable manner. Finally, we have property law. This is a body of rules that governs the ownership and use of property. It covers both real property, which refers to land and buildings, and personal property, which refers to movable items such as vehicles or furniture. Property law aims to balance the rights of owners with the interests of the wider community, and it provides a framework for resolving disputes over the use and ownership of property. So these are just some of the core concepts of law that you need to know about. There are so many more areas that we haven't covered. So if you want to learn more about the law, you can check out some of the links in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe for more legal content. Thank you for watching.